this was actually one that I recorded last. And I'm like, I have a video talking about there's something wrong with the Fever, how they look defeated, everything. And I still stand by those videos, especially because some of them are reactions at the time, right after the game. So, I mean this when I say this. Fire Stephanie White yesterday. Like, fire her yesterday. And the reason why is not that Stephanie White is a bad basketball coach. It's not that Stephanie White is a bad motivational speaker. It's not that Stephanie White has done a bad job defending her players. It's not any of that. It's that Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark fundamentally have different understandings of the sport of basketball.
Oh, you thought WNBA drama peaked last week? Think again. Linn Dunn just detonated a verbal nuke on Stephanie White for treating Caitlin Clark like a glorified ball passer instead of the offensive hurricane she is. And folks, it's not subtle. Buckle up, because this meltdown has everything. Passive-aggressive shade, coaching chaos, and a sprinkle of Indiana fury. Why is Caitlin Clark basically on a leash? Let's break down this spicy basketball soap opera. You won't believe who said what.
So I had a film breakdown prepared today, but I'm actually going to go a different direction. This is a rant because we have to talk about the state of this Indiana Fever team, and I'm here to bring the reality to all you Fever fans. This team is not a championship team. They're not a championship team. They're nowhere near close to a championship team because every team that is a championship team can play defense. This Indiana Fever team has no defense, and that's like the farthest of their problems. Their offense looked really bad today, and Caitlin Clark obviously didn't shoot the basketball well, but I'm not going to blame this loss on Caitlin Clark, even though obviously they would have won if she would have shot the ball well.
Linn Dunn didn't just wake up and choose violence. She chose a full comp press of righteous indignation and sideline sass. Because apparently, watching Caitlin Clark jog around the perimeter like she's auditioning for a Fitbit commercial, while the Indiana Fever run an offense that looks like a group project nobody showed up for, yeah, that was a bridge too far.
To go an entire game where they have not scored more than 20 points, where they have a quarter where they only score 9 points, and to call yourself a professional basketball team is pathetic. To call yourself a professional basketball coach of that team is pathetic. I watched that whole game, and other than Ari McDonald, Aaliyah Boston with a moment here and a moment there, nobody made any type of memorable impact on that game.
And when Linn Dunn goes off, it's not a polite tea-sipping disagreement. It's more like a thunderclap in a library. Subtlety? Gone. Diplomacy? Evacuated the building. What we got instead was a seismic smackdown that lit up every group chat from ESPN to the Fever's practice facility, all because one coaching decision, scratch that, one series of decisions, had Caitlin Clark looking less like the NCAA scoring phenom and more like a decoy in her own biopic.
And said, man, I want to speak on some recent comments that I saw coming across about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, right? And this just speaks to a point that I made earlier about like people, it just shows that like how fickle fans are, right? And so, you know, like the Fever yesterday just lost to they lost to the Aces, right? And their record is 6 wins, 7 losses. Same thing for the Aces. Their record is 6 wins and 7 losses. But for the Fever, you know, you have people who are, you know, who want to already run the coach Stephanie White out of town.
Stephanie White, bless her clipboard, apparently thought it was a genius idea to turn Clark into an honorary traffic cone while the offense stumbled around like it was being called in Morse code. Let's just say the vibes were not immaculate. Dunn wasn't having it. The moment Clark's handles became background noise in a playbook drawn with invisible ink, she launched into full executive mode.
The reason you lost was not because Caitlin Clark didn't score the basketball. The reason you lost is because you stopped doing what was working. What worked for the Indiana Fever, especially in that first half, was a pick and roll with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. All you have to do is have a pick and roll at the top of the key. Off that pick and roll, 2 defenders are going to go with Caitlin Clark, leaving Aaliyah Boston to have a wide open lane. That is just the play you should go to every single possession. But how come we never go to it in back-to-back possession? We'll go to it one possession, the next possession we don't go to it. Why not? Stephanie White, why not? It always works. 2 defenders are always going to go with Caitlin Clark. There should never be a play where Caitlin Clark brings the ball up the court and then she passes it and she runs off the playoff ball.
And when a GM speaks with that kind of lava-laced passion, it isn't just noise. It's a siren blaring. Fix this mess, or brace for impact. This wasn't just about underutilizing a star player. This was a full-blown basketball identity crisis, happening live in 4K with popcorn-worthy levels of mismanagement. It's one thing to draft a generational talent. It's another to treat her like she's a glorified cheerleader with a solid jumper. Dunn seemed to be watching the same circus as the fans. Clark constantly passing it off, defenders barely respecting her space, and the coaching staff looking like they're assembling IKEA furniture without the manual. And while Stephanie White might be playing the long game, aiming for balance or development or whatever buzzword gets printed on the media guide, Linn Dunn was done playing nice. Because there's no universe where you let the most electric rookie in years become an off-ball ghost while the team clanks mid-range bricks like it's 1997. At this rate, Caitlin Clark might need a missing poster. Last seen setting records in college, now lost in Indiana's rotational Bermuda Triangle. Now remember, Dunn isn't some passive executive chilling in a high-rise. She's a basketball lifer, a strategist with decades of receipts, and she's not about to let her prized rookie get turned into the WNBA's most famous bystander. The woman practically slammed the panic button with her shoe.
What was the game plan against her to kind of slow her down?
Well, like I said pregame, it was just to try to make everything as difficult as possible. Like, you know, Asia's one of the best players in the world. You know, you're not going to stop her. So we just needed to make it difficult, and I thought AB did. But Asia did what great players do, and they step up in the fourth quarter, and that's what she did. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is what we have to do as a staff to get her better looks, like higher quality looks. Every game plan is going to be to make her score inside the three-point line.
So what was the game plan? That's the problem. There wasn't one. The Fever looked like they were playing improv theater with a basketball. 1 minute, Clark's sprinting like she's about to do something electric. The next, she's just chilling in the corner while a teammate bricks another ISO attempt like it's a team tradition. And you could see it on Clark's face. That simmering, polite Midwestern fury, the kind where the smile gets tighter, the nods get slower, and you just know she's plotting a full-scale basketball revolution in her head. Meanwhile, fans, oh, they went full Sherlock Holmes. Frame-by-frame video breakdowns, conspiracy-level diagrams, arrows pointing in all directions, wondering if Stephanie White was conducting an experiment to see how many times you can misuse the most gifted shooter in women's basketball before a GM physically combusts. And then there's the irony. Clark didn't even need the ball to expose the confusion. Her off-ball movements practically screamed help, like a beacon in a sea of mid-range jumpers and defensive breakdowns. While defenders glued themselves to her like glitter at a preschool, the Fever offense wandered aimlessly like they'd lost their GPS and their will to compete.
So yes, the definition of Murphy's Law is anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Now, I'm being kind of dramatic here, but the Indiana Fever are down coach Stephanie White for an indeterminate amount of time. She is out for personal reasons. Stephanie White and her partner, Lisa Salters, who is also a sideline reporter for some NBA games. She is a sideline reporter for the NFL. They were both out at the same time, most recently, like a couple weeks ago. This is completely a personal reason, but there's obviously something that they're dealing with at home. But the adversity that the Indiana Fever have faced this season, I don't know that I've ever seen a team just go down so many key players and key factors to the roster. I mean, I don't know if a coach would be like a key roster member, but
Linn Dunn, she didn't just notice, she boiled. Watching your franchise star treated like a floor prop in a low-budget production is enough to make any seasoned exec question reality. She saw the shot opportunities evaporate, the spacing collapse like a bad souffle, and the offense trudged through molasses while Clark stood ready, wide-eyed, untouched, ignored. Social media, of course, absolutely detonated. Fans turned into coaches overnight. Play diagrams flooded timelines. People were resurrecting old NCAA footage like it was sacred scripture, shouting into the void. Let her cook. Meanwhile, Fever supporters quietly whispered prayers for an offensive coordinator, or at minimum, a whiteboard that isn't just used as a coaster during timeouts. By the time Dunn stepped in, the vibes were so off they needed a full-blown basketball exorcism. And if that meant airing it out publicly, so be it, because the clock is ticking and you don't draft a generational star just to park her like a bench ornament while the offense plays hot potato with zero heat. It was a basketball mystery so bizarre it could have aired on HBO. Right after a Mafia documentary, Who Muzzled Caitlin Clark? Spoiler? It wasn't a rogue defender or a defensive genius from the opposing bench. Nope, the culprit was sitting front and center in the coach's chair, clipboard in hand, drawing up offensive schemes straight from the How to Undermine Your Franchise Star handbook.
Not even different understandings. What Stephanie White wants to do is not going to work for this team. It is not going to work for this team. What Stephanie White wants to do will not work. And by the way, I'm not saying what Stephanie White wants to do is won't work in general. Won't work in general. Because it has worked. She's had success. But I'm saying what Stephanie White wants to do will not work for this team specifically. And let's take a listen to what Caitlin Clark said. And she essentially exposed that Stephanie White wants him to play slow.
This wasn't an off night. It was a masterclass in confusion. Plays unfolded like improv scenes where no one knew their lines. Imagine giving Picasso a paintbrush, then duct taping his hands behind his back and telling him to just supervise while interns finger paint. That's what watching Caitlin stand in the corner felt like. Meanwhile, fans across the globe had a collective meltdown that could have powered a small city. Reddit threads multiplied like conspiracy theories during a power outage. Memes exploded. Analysts, former players, keyboard coaches, everyone threw their 2 cents into the inferno. Was this some avant-garde strategy, or just an Olympic-level fumble of coaching common sense? And then, enter Linn Dunn, channeling the spirit of every frustrated fan who screamed at their TV in disbelief. This wasn't just a concerned executive peeking in from the sidelines. This was a basketball intervention disguised as a reckoning. A legacy figure finally snapping like a dry erase marker at halftime. She didn't mince words. She didn't throw glitter on the issue and hope it shimmered away. No, she lit it up like a fourth quarter comeback with everything on the line. Caitlin Clark isn't on this roster to hand out assists like Halloween candy. She's not a decoy. She's a flamethrower. And keeping that flamethrower holstered while the team struggles to make layups? That's not strategy. That's sabotage.
About the difference we've seen from Caitlin Clark since that Connecticut Sun game. I think she is partly sick, but there are also a lot of other issues going on. She's been a completely different player. And I don't mean just missing the threes. There is no fire there. There's no arguing with the officials. There's no getting the crowd revved up. It seems like she's almost checked out, resigned herself to being less than in order to please a coach that wants to take away Caitlin Clark's strengths. I don't know how else to describe it at this point. As you can see in this picture, I saw this. I want to share this because this just gave me flashbacks to early last season. Now, of course, Christy Sides doesn't have the ego that Stephanie White does, and she recognized what was going on and basically eventually post-break gave Caitlin Clark the keys and said, do your thing. But does Caitlin Clark look okay? And Steph yelling in her ear, nope, absolutely, she does not look okay.
Suddenly, the silence broke. The noise got louder. Everything shifted. The basketball world sat up straighter. The vibe was clear. This wasn't going to slide under the rug. Not with Dunn stomping around like an accountability tornado. She reminded everyone what's at stake here. Wins, respect, and maybe even the future of the franchise. So now, with the world watching and the locker room tension thick enough to slice with a Gatorade bottle cap, all eyes are on White. Will she stick to the script or finally let the superstar cook? This wasn't just about minutes or shot volume. This was about identity, legacy, systemic mismanagement. Because what we were watching wasn't development, it was denial, like trying to house train a lion. And Clark is the lion. Now, let's be fair, coaching a rookie is hard. Coaching a phenom with a target on her back? Borderline impossible. But you know what's worse? Ignoring the generational weapon you have and hoping no one notices she's being used like a decoy in her own highlight reel. And look, Stephanie White has credentials. She's no slouch. But somewhere between the whiteboard and the actual game, something got lost in translation. Maybe she thought easing Clark in slowly would keep expectations low. Maybe she wanted to protect her from burnout. Or maybe she forgot the cardinal rule of coaching. When you have a cannon, you don't use it to roast marshmallows.
I'm sorry, but this is a regular season game. There's no player that's going to be that depressed about a loss. The emotion that she's having right now, that's emotion that you have when you lose a championship. But they didn't lose a championship. So it's only one other thing. It's the coach. I knew something was up, y'all. I played basketball all my life. I played point guard. There was something off about Miss Caitlin when I was watching that Aces game. And I couldn't put my finger on it. It just seemed like Miss Caitlin, she was definitely unmotivated. She looked defeated the whole game. She didn't look like she was having fun. And that is always because of the coach.
The WNBA isn't a charity league. These women play to win, and the Fever have a once-in-a-generation opportunity, one that fans have been begging for. They didn't pack out arenas to watch Clark pass the ball to players who treat the rim like a haunted object. And the locker room? Tensions are percolating like a mid-season trade rumor. You can practically hear the inner monologues. Why is our best player acting like a decoy while I'm out here launching contested jumpers like it's 2013? Meanwhile, Clark is doing her best political smile while reporters hurl questions about her non-existent usage like it's a national scandal. Which, at this point, it kind of is. And here's the kicker. Every single person saw this coming. Fans, analysts, that one guy on TikTok who makes WNBA memes from his basement. Everyone knew Caitlin Clark needed freedom, not a leash. But there she was, handcuffed by play calls that looked like they were drawn with a crayon by someone who once saw a basketball game on TV. Then Dunn stepped in like a sitcom auntie who'd had enough. If sass were currency, she'd be a billionaire. Her message was crystal clear. This is not how you develop a star. This is how you frustrate one into early retirement. The basketball world erupted. Every talking head from cable sports to your cousin's podcast weighed in. And the verdict? Stephanie White might want to update her resume. And then, like all great sports dramas, the plot twisted. Because suddenly whispers started flying, lineup shakeups, new rotations, a shift in offensive philosophy. It was as if Dunn had walked into a team meeting with a flamethrower and said, "Let's try not ruining our future for a change."
All right, Fever fans, it's time to have a very difficult conversation. One that we don't really want to talk about. The question is, what are we going to do about Stephanie White? You know, a lot of you were screaming, get rid of Christy Sides. For Stephanie White, you were happy, you were excited, you were stoked. But I think Stephanie White has a lot to do with this team's failures. Some of you out there, of course, will put this on Caitlin Clark's play in the last couple games. But I put it on the scheme. I put it on the game plan. Because a really, really, really good coach looks at its talent. Kelsey Mitchell, Boston, Caitlin, and go, they make a game plan to make that work.
Next game, Clark had the ball more. Not full reign, but enough to make fans exhale slightly. Still, the damage had been done. The whole saga turned into a case study on how not to handle generational talent. And White's coaching credibility? Well, let's just say it took a hit so big, even the G League felt it. And here's the most ironic part. If White had just done the obvious thing, build the offense around the most electrifying scorer in the league, none of this would have happened. But no. We had to take the scenic route through Bad Decision Valley and make a pit stop at Underdog Fantasy Island before realizing the obvious. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark, still classy, still deadly. But you can bet your last jersey she's keeping receipts. Because if anyone's going to rewrite the playbook on how rookies should be used, it's the woman who turned college basketball into a one-woman show. Linn Dunn knew it, the fans knew it, even the janitor at Gainbridge Fieldhouse probably knew it. The only one late to the party? Stephanie White, who may now be coaching with the basketball equivalent of a court order to stop overthinking things. And you know it's bad when the highlight reels start looking like diss tracks. Every assist Clark makes now comes with a side eye from the crowd, like, yeah, but she could have scored that herself.
I don't care. When we're talking about impact, nobody on that team made impact that game. The coach made no impact. Bonner made no impact. Howard made no impact. Colson made no impact. Mitchell made no impact. Lexi Hull made no impact. Damaris Dantis had her worst game of the season. I'm not out on you, Damaris. It was just the worst game of all season. We got to call a spade here. Aaliyah Boston had a few moments. and Ari McDonald are the only two players that I can sit and I can actually say to you without lying and feeling dirty about myself, saying those two players at least had some type of impact on the game. As for the rest of you, you need to give Kelly Krauskopf back your money.
The Fever front office, watching the online chaos, had two choices: double down on disaster or listen to the woman with a Hall of Fame resume and zero tolerance for strategic malpractice. Thankfully, they chose the latter, and so the new era begins. Sort of. We're not at Clark Unleashed levels yet, but we're inching there, slowly, like a toddler learning to ride a bike while the crowd chants, "Just let her sprint already!" What does the future hold? Probably more drama, more memes, and maybe, just maybe, an offense that treats Caitlin Clark like the superstar she is, not an intern fetching the ball for everyone else. Because let's be honest, the WNBA needs her firing on all cylinders. The fans want it, the ratings demand it, and Linn Dunn? She practically set off a siren just to make sure it happens. So, here we are, on the brink of what could either be the greatest rookie breakout story since sliced bread, or a cautionary tale about coaching paralysis. But if there's one thing we know for sure, Linn Dunn does not play when it comes to basketball brilliance being wasted. And if this saga has taught us anything, it's that when a legend speaks, maybe, just maybe, the clipboard crowd should listen before the next timeout comes with pitchforks.
And I just think that it's way premature for something like that, right? I said it yesterday on my podcast, and before the game even started, I said that the Fever needs to continue to develop their chemistry, right? Caitlin Clark missed 4 or 5 games, and so here we are, 13 games into the season. They one game below 500, and people are ready. Some fans are jumping the ship, or not just jumping the ship. Fans are ready to, they want to fire Stephanie White.
And if you're Stephanie White, well, let's hope she's got a better game plan than Operation Hide the Star. Because Clark's not just here to pass time, she's here to torch the league, preferably with a coaching staff that remembers how matches work. And with every possession, every buzzer beater left uncalled, the suspense builds. Will we see Clark take over like the hardwood monarch everyone expected? Or will more strategic adjustments keep us guessing until postseason probabilities vanish like a half-caught prayer? Whatever happens next, one thing's certain: basketball fans have their popcorn ready, just in case another rotation mistake ends up trendier than a sneaker drop. Because when you're sitting on dynamite, lighting the fuse isn't optional, it's destiny. Let the fireworks begin.